This week's Fertility Fact Friday is all about the difference between day 3 and day 5 embryo transfers. With IVF, after an egg retrieval, we fertilize the eggs and then we can grow them for a variable number of days in the lab before we freeze them and or transfer them. In the earlier days of IVF, the standard was to transfer embryos at an earlier stage, especially at day 3. But in more recent years, especially in the last decade or so, we've been growing embryos out to day 5, even up to day 7, and transferring them at that stage. And many studies have shown much higher rates of success when embryos are grown out to the blastocyst stage, where you have two different cell types, cells that become the placenta on the outer part of the embryo, and these cells that separate out to one day become the baby. However, for some patients, it's challenging to get embryos to grow from day 3 to day 5. And this can be a function of egg quality, embryo quality in general, and also lab quality. So what's truly better in what circumstance, day 3 or day 5? Something to know about embryo biology is that getting to day 3 is not that much of a challenge. The embryo is kind of on autopilot, but after day 3, it has to start turning on its own genes, and it's much more of a challenge. So you tend to see a lot more drop off. And this can be used as a selection tool to choose the best embryo. Speaking of selection, a day 3 embryo only has around 8 cells. So if you remove one of those cells to do genetic testing, you're harming that embryo. Whereas a blastocyst stage embryo at day 5 and beyond has 100 to 200 cells, and they separate out so you can safely remove some of the placental cells without damaging the embryo and harming its reproductive potential. We believe that part of the reason why day 5 embryos have higher implantation rates is because a lot of these are not healthy and they get weeded out as you grow them into this stage of development. But also, this allows you to do the genetic testing to further select the healthiest embryo with a lower risk of miscarriage. Another reason blastocyst stage transfers are thought to be better is because if you think about what happens in your body, the embryo is at day 3 when it's still in the fallopian tube, and it usually arrives as a day 4, day 5 embryo and implants after it hatches from the shell. So putting back an embryo at the blastocyst stage into the uterine cavity is going to be much more similar to what normally happens if you have an unassisted pregnancy or conception. Because day 3 embryos, a lot of them aren't going to have reproductive potential, you often have to put back multiple to give someone a good chance of success, whereas with blastocyst stage embryos, it can be reasonable to put back one embryo at a time. These are the main reasons why most IVF centers are preferring to do blastocyst stage embryo transfers.